Okay, we're going to bring the meeting to order, the Amador County Board of Supervisors. Wouldn't mind standing and doing the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, we held the closed session upstairs, and direction was given on 1A. We'll be going back into closed session after the Board of Supervisors for 2 and 3, 4 and 5. Okay. Public matters not on the agenda. Discussion items only, no action will be taken. Any person may address the board at this time upon any subject within the jurisdiction of Amador County. Board of Supervisors, however, any matter that requires action may be referred to staff and/or committee for a report and recommendation for possible action at subsequent board meeting. Please note there's a 3-minute limit. There we go.
Good morning. Bill May, 4121 Jackson Valley Road. I had a handout provided to you folks, basically raises questions about fixing our county roads. The questions are fairly simple, straightforward, yes or no. Does the board agree that the county roads are in poor and deteriorating condition? Does the board agree that some roads are dangerous and unsafe to drive on? Does the county have a plan to repair, resurface, or replace county roads? Will that plan be shared with county constituents? Does the county plan on requesting grant funds from the State Safe Roads and Streets Act? Does the county have funds available for the 20% match? And I would just observe that even though it might not be much, you keep spending money on employee salaries. Probably the most important one for me is, will the board schedule a public meeting so that your constituents can share their issues and concerns with the board? It's time you got transparent. It's time you set a meeting so your constituents can actually come in and talk to you and talk about your issues and concerns. I don't know what you're afraid of. I frankly don't. The potholes, just as an observation, the potholes that fixed by George Reed quarries at taxpayers' expense do nothing to improve the roads. As a matter of fact, if you drive down Martin Lane, as I pointed out to your public works director, you will find that the pots have gone and only the holes are left. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Hey, Bill, I filled out your form, so you can take it if you want it. I filled out your form. You can take it if you want it.
Any other public opinion? Okay, anybody on Zoom?
Not at this time.
Okay. Approval of the agenda, we need to add 1A to, I'm going to make it to 7C, the public hearing.
Those changes.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Thank you, Chairman Brown.
Hold on, I'm sorry, just for a second. Just for everybody's knowledge, Supervisor Forrester is at a remote location. It is on the agenda, and he'll be in via Zoom. Okay, thank you, Heather.
Chairman Brown.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Onetto.
Aye.
Supervisor Axe.
Aye.
Supervisor Crew.
Aye.
Supervisor Forster.
Aye.
5-0. Approval items on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote,
I'd move
please.
approval on the consent agenda, Mr. Chair.
Chairman Brown,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Onetto,
Aye.
Supervisor Axe,
Aye.
Supervisor Crew,
Aye.
and Supervisor Forster.
Aye.
Okay, again, 5-0. On to presentation of proclamation recognizing the month of March as Red Cross Month. Did you have anything to come up and say? Or we'd go on to our rest of our morning?
Morning.
Thank the Board of Supervisors for issuing this proclamation, and it has been an honor to serve the citizens of Amador County in their time of need throughout all disasters. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody from the public have anything to say? Anybody on Zoom?
Not at this time.
Back to the supervisors? Can I get a motion then?
Make a motion to approve the resolution recognizing the month of March as Red Cross Month.
Okay,
Second.
second. Roll call vote?
Thank you, Chairman Brown,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Onetto.
Aye.
Supervisor Axe.
Aye.
Supervisor Crew,
Aye.
and Supervisor Forster.
Aye.
Okay, I'd like to read this resolution. Whereas during the American Red Cross Month is in March, we celebrate the humanitarian spirit of Amador County and reaffirm our commitment to help ensure no one faces a crisis alone. Whereas caring for one another is at the heart of our community and exemplified by the people of Amador County, whose simple acts of kindness through the Red Cross provides help, hope in people's most difficult moments. Continuing the life-saving legacy of Clara Barton, who founded the organization more than 140 years ago to prevent and alleviate human suffering. Whereas every day, these ordinary individuals lend a helping hand to make an extraordinary difference for neighbors in need. Whether it's providing emergency shelter, food, comfort for families displaced from home fires, wildland fires, flooding, and extreme weather conditions, helping to make our community safer through the preparedness training for the citizens of all ages, smoke alarm installations, donating life-saving blood for cancer patients, accident victims, and people with sickle cell disease and other life-threatening conditions, supporting the military members and veterans along with their families and caregivers through the unique challenges of the service, using vital skills like first aid and CPR to help others survive medical emergencies, or delivering international humanitarian aid and reconnecting loved ones separated by crisis around the world. Their support, volunteerism, and generosity donations are critical to our community's resilience. We hereby recognize the month of March in honor of all those who fulfill Clara Barton's noble words. You must never think of anything except the need and how to meet it, and ask everyone to join in this commitment. Therefore, it be resolved that the Amador County Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim March 2023 as Red Cross Month and encourages all citizens of Amador County to reach out and support its humanitarian mission. Come on back up and we'll... I truly want to thank you for everything you've done, especially you personally. I've seen your face so many times at all these extreme emergencies we've had, warming shelters, PSPS, all these different events, and I truly appreciate all your work, and plus all your comrades. I truly appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, on to 6B, Assessor's Roll Correction or Approval of P19 Base Year Value Transfer being decreased over $150,000. Jim, you want to come on up?
Morning, Board. Jim Rooney, Amador County Assessor. Good morning. So you have this as something, were there questions about?
Well, I'm asking just to explain it a little bit. Just give us a,
Oh, okay.
as you look at it, it just looks really weird.
Yes, it does. The most important thing you gotta understand and remember is the term Prop 19, the base year value transfer. I don't have the absolute details on each one of these, but there are 9 of them of substantial reductions in their assessments. And in general, these are properties that were purchased by somebody who is over the age of 55, who had a property in a different county, who sold that property. That property had a base year assessable value of substantially or somewhat less than the purchase price of their new property that they bought in Amador. And they want, rather than have the purchase price or the value in Amador established as their assessed value, Prop 19 allows them to bring the assessed value that they had in another county and get that established as their new base year value to be assessed at that. And generally, it is substantially lower than what would be the assessed value.
And regardless of whatever their assessed value is.
Yes.
Currently.
I'm going to give you an example of how this works, and I'm not going to be referring to any of these assessments specifically. But what happens is, I'll tell you of an example. This happened not too long ago. Somebody in the Bay Area sold their house for $1.4 million. And in that county, in the Bay Area, it was assessed at just under $100,000. So they come to Amador County, they bought a house for about a little over $500,000. And they were able to bring that assessed value from the Bay Area, that $100,000, and have it established on the house they just purchased for $500,000. And by Prop 13, we have to enroll that as their assessed value. So what they did was they sold the house for 1.4, bought it $500,000, had a $900,000 net gain, come to Amador, buy something, and whereas anybody in Amador County would be paying on the $500,000 assessment, they got to bring their assessment in, and with that $900,000 gain, rather than paying $5,000 like everybody else would, they pay $1,000. It is really an interesting situation. But right now I'm working with some assessors throughout the state. Matter of fact, I'm kind of the lead on this. There is a revenue protection fund that is supposed to be established by the state that in that Bay Area county, when they had that $100,000 assessment and that house sold for $1.4 million, the property taxes on that property went from $1,000 a year to $14,000 a year. That is a huge increase. And in Amador County, that $500,000 property is being assessed at $100,000, so we have a bit of a decrease. Well, the Revenue Protection Fund is supposed to, according to Prop 19,
Take some of that revenue from Santa Clara and ship it here.
I'm not going to say what county, but from the Bay Area County, they're supposed to put it in a fund and reimburse us and make us whole. Yes, that is what's supposed to happen. This proposition is so complicated that it is taking us months to figure out how to make this work. So we are having a difficult time, but we're gonna get through it.
But there's nothing we can really do about this. This is the law, right?
It's Prop 19.
Yeah.
Prop 19 also did something. It used to be that anybody in the county, it was inter-county, could transfer up to $1 million of assessed value to their children or to their parents, and it would not, and they could be excluded from being reassessed. So, you know, a family in the county, parents transfer their property to their children. It's a $400,000 property. It's assessed at $100,000. They were able to keep that $100,000. Prop 19 did away with that. So now that family in Amador County is going to be paying full on that, unless it is the primary residence of the parents, and the children who take the property have to live in that property. And then again, you say, how do you enforce that? Because we don't go out every year and say, by the way, who's living here now? Prop 19 is maddening, but we're dealing with it. So anyway, that's the how that Prop 19 works and how it is working.
Mr. Chairman, we have Supervisor Forster has his hand up.
Go ahead, Supervisor Forster.
Yes, Mr. Rooney, I understand all you said, and it is a horrible proposition as far as we're concerned in Amador. But one question, there's two assessor roll corrections for the same person, Peggy Ann Pabst. Why would there be two of those? Did she buy or did she sell two properties and buy into one?
You say Peggy Ann Pabst? Okay, let me,
I think there might be, was there a homeowner's exemption in one of them or something?
no, I think there, oh, shoot. All right, well, let me, you want me to look at that particular one?
Yeah, you can get back to us with the answer. I'm just curious why there's two corrections for the same person on the same property that she went into.
Sometimes that has to do with, we didn't get to it as quickly as we would have wanted to. So it covered 2 assessment years, and there would be two corrections.
Yeah, it's 21-22.
Yeah. So essentially, it's the same property, same assessment, but over 2 time periods.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody from the public? Anybody else on Zoom?
Say, Jim,
Yes.
could someone buy a house really cheap and then turn 55 and then sell it, move to the Bay Area and buy a multi-million-dollar house and get their assessment reassessed at a lower value?
Yes, kind of.
Yeah.
So what would happen is in Amador, if we reverse that, you sold your house for $500,000, it had a $100,000 assessment. You moved to the Bay Area, you pay $1.4 million.
Right, or more.
So now the difference between that $500,000 and the $1.4 million is $900,000 additional. You would get that $100,000 assessment plus the difference between the sales price of your home and the purchase price of the one you bought in the Bay Area, which is $900,000. So that would be about $1 million assessment, which would be better than $1.4 million. But it would be $1 million in the Bay Area, where it is $100,000 here. I mentioned to somebody yesterday, I said, this is a two-way street, but there's a heck of a lot more traffic going one way than the other. Because people generally don't move from Amador to Marin, or from Calaveras to Santa Clara, you know? So,
If I could call for a motion?
I'll make a motion then to approve the assessor roll corrections. Approval is based on Prop 19 base year value transfers.
Second.
Have a first and second. Roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chairman Brown,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Oneto,
Aye.
Supervisor Axe,
Aye.
Supervisor Crew,
Aye.
and Supervisor Forster.
Aye.
Okay, 5-0. Thank you, Jim.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, 6C, discussion and possible action relative to presentation by the CAO and the Budget Director regarding the status of the 2022-2023 county budget and look ahead at the 2023-2024 budget. Staff is looking for any changes or direction that the board would like to see as the budgets are being sent to department heads this week.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the beginning of the budget process for the 23-24 budget. I put this entire, well, almost I added a slide, is in the budget packet, which is unusual because we're usually not quite ready. But we are in this case, and I think we've got some good things to show you. I'm planning on coming back in 2 weeks to kind of do an overview, a comprehensive conversation on where all of our funds are going. I know the concern from Mr. May and that enough isn't going towards roads, and we can talk a bit about how the road money is being spent. But a large chunk of our funding is being eaten up by law enforcement, and there is I believe a feeling amongst the board that taking money away from law enforcement is not proper use of the funds in order to go forward. But anyway, here we are right now. Just a recap on what we approved last year. Our fund balance was $7.4 million. You'll see that's projected to be down significantly this year, with the total available financing sources and uses of $53.8 million. This is just the general fund. It does not include the other funds, which is the road fund is separate, the realignment funds are separate. This is just the general fund, but out of the general fund is what funds the general department, including the Board of Supervisors, most administration, the assessor, as well as all of law enforcement, from probation, the DA, and the sheriff. Just a little bit of history as to where we are now compared to where we've been in years past. You can see 22-23, this current budget. We've collected 48.82% of our revenues, which is high compared to years past. So we're in pretty good shape there. Revenues and expenditures are not linear, and that's one thing to note. So comparing where we are this year to years past and where ultimately we've ended up in years past, we can put a pretty good projection together for where we'll be at the end of the fiscal year. As far as expenditures, we are higher this year at 48% than we've been in recent years, but not as high as we've been in the early teens years. So we're still feeling pretty good. One thing to remember is that there's still a number of factors that are affecting our expenditures and revenues, and we'll talk about those going on. But the COVID funding is still in the system and skewing things a good bit. And here is the other funds that we've got, and you can see where they are and what we've got remaining. We're not sounding any alarms on any spending there. You can see the ARPA fund is at 120%. That's just because we had not budgeted them all, but we've received subsequent direction to spend. So we're not overspending that. So looking forward.
So when your revenues for like GSA support services are 600, and 3, and then the expenditures are 921. We don't have to worry about that, or am I not reading it right?
That's okay, yes. Because of the fact that our expenditures are not linear. And
Okay,
nor
so this is like through the middle of the year?
correct.
Okay.
This is as of, January 1st, which is
Okay.
our 6-month point.
All right.
So, yes, a good example is when we start spending, the general fund, starts spending July 1st, but we don't get any revenue until December because property taxes don't start coming in. If you compared that, you would get very, very worried because we'd be in a negative situation. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. This all leads to our projected number here, carry forward to 2.28 million at the end of 22-23. That's what we're anticipating, which is down 5 million from 21-22. So what's happening with revenues in fiscal year 22-23? Bradley Burns, we're actually right now looking at 3.4% increase. What we're actually collecting this year is 3.4% higher than what we had last year. So we are projecting for next year to be 3% over what we had previously anticipated. So I think in 21-22 we had a 4%. We projected a 4% increase. So we're 3.4% over that. Sorry. And then Prop 172 as well is up significantly. We are projecting a 3% increase for 23-24. The TOT is also up, and we're showing a 3% for that as well. Jackson Rancheria and Harris, both of those we're anticipating them contributing what they contributed last year, as far as in 22-23, which is right about $1.4 million. But one area where we are down is our transfer taxes, and that would be expected with the increase in interest rates. Transfer taxes are down. Those are the fees that are paid for recording when you sell your house or property, and with property tax or interest rates up, property sales are going to go down. So we are projecting a decrease of 22% for next year.
But isn't that just like the last quarter or last half of last year?
Well, I wouldn't anticipate that it would come back.
No, I realize it's not going to come back up.
Correct. Yes. It has
Anytime soon,
tilted
but
down.
the real estate market is still pretty tight.
It is tight, but I think we're going to see that things are not going to sell, is what's likely to happen. So if nothing's selling and nothing's moving, then transfer taxes are going to go into the black hole. So you can see what our property taxes have done year over year, going up to 21-22. They have rapidly increased, and they continued to do so, and they are still up this year. And you can see what our sales tax has done, whereas 2021, 22, we're right around 3% for 21-22, and we're projecting 3% more for 22-23.
A note on the property taxes, most of that goes to the schools.
Correct.
62%.
About 1/3 of that comes to the county, and 2/3 goes to the schools.
Yeah.
So roughly, yeah. So the 5-year trend for sales tax, obviously it fluctuates up and down, but we are projecting a relatively minor 3% increase for next year, which appears to be holding right now. We have not seen any downtick in that. So expenditures in 22-23, we're expecting a $476,000 savings in the general fund because of vacancies. We did have the COLA increases, as of October, and, there will be COLA increases for next October, October of '23. Those have been negotiated, and, that's caused our costs to go up by $591,000. We did set aside money last year to pay for those increases. We did prepay our PERS unfunded liability. That saves us $230,000 because we don't pay that 7.5% increase for the fiscal year. We are estimating spending $325,000 of the $1.2 million contingency. Right now, we're at only $178,000 of that contingency. The only concern with that is that it takes a chunk out of the carry forward rather than having that whole contingency to work off of. Changes to our GASB 87, I don't know if you all remember that, but that was where we had to basically pay for the HHS rent because they wouldn't let us bill it direct to realignment funds. That is now completed for 23-24 fiscal year. So we will be recovering from this point forward with 2 years in arrears. We will be recovering that HHS rent. So that $2 million hit to the general fund has disappeared, which is good. And we used our CFF to purchase the Wicklow Way to, I guess, cancel the debt for the Wicklow Way property. So that has been that's been repaid. That debt is no longer on the books. So what we're projecting for next year, our fund balance at $2.28 million, which I referenced. Property taxes estimated to increase by 3%, which is down a little bit from what we've had in years past. But it still results in increased revenue of $608,000 to us. The Prop 13 increases, they actually, rather than allowing us to increase property values by the full 2%, the state restricted us to 1.036%, affecting about 90% of the homes in the county. So if you're assessed at $200,000, but if you're valued at $200,000 and you're assessed at $150,000, that $150,000 would only go up by 1.09036, rather than the full 2%. That was the state put that on us. Property taxes in lieu of BLF estimated to increase by 3%, which gives us $164,000. And Bradley Burns is also expected to go up by 3%, which is a $125,000 increase. We are not showing any excess tax loss reserve transfers, also known as the teeter funds. We're not anticipating any transfers in or out.
So Chuck, real quick on the $2.28 million, is that a true carryover or is that spent at all?
No, that's what we're anticipating being unspent from this budget cash on hand at the end of the year.
Okay, how much is that ARPA funds? Is that? There
will be none of that would be ARPA funds.
Okay, so.
Yeah, that $2.28 million is unrestricted.
Okay.
But we anticipate that every year rolling over. So that's not unusual to have that carryover, but none of it is ARPA funds.
Okay.
So expenditures for 22-23 or 23-24, the wages are expected to increase by $622,000. Our PERS unfunded liability costs are going to decrease. This is the first time you've heard me say these words. The PERS is going to decrease this year. Next year, it's also projected to decrease, but they have managed to not hit their assumptions. They had one really good year, and then it's back into the toilet again. So this year it's going to go down by 238. That is across all funds. And next year they're actually anticipating it to go down by, I think, about $600,000 again. That's just our unfunded liability. Yeah, that's a benefit. It had been going up by as much as $1 million a year. So that's nice.
Are we now on the downside slope, or?
We're on the downside slope, but since they have managed to not hit their target for this
We're gonna
year,
go back on the
it's
upside?
gonna come back. It's gonna come back and hit us. We'll talk about that in a minute too. Health insurance costs are going up a full 5%. We're expecting that to happen, which is $156,000. We have set the contingency at $1.3 million. We brought that up from $1.2 million. We should be, the practice the board has set forth is to set it at 3%, which I'm incrementally trying to get to rather than just doing it all at once. We've never spent more than $300,000 in any year out of contingencies, so I'm comfortable with that. 87 cost decrease to the general fund by $2.3 million. That's a large decrease. And other operating expenditures are assumed to be status quo. Gas prices are always a concern, but they are where they've been for the past year. And then the county's risk pool, we're showing increased liability in workers' comp, about $540,000 hitting the general fund in 23-24. So that's what we're seeing. But the liability and workers' comp premiums are going up, and you can see what they've done. They held relatively flat for a while, but they are both of those are going up. So CalPERS, this is some detail on where we are with both the unfunded liability and the action or the normal costs. You can see what we've got. Remember, we've got the 6 different tiers, 2 PEPRA tiers for anybody who's being hired currently, both the Peace Officer Classic and the Miscellaneous Classic for anybody who's hired now, and Safety the Local Prosecutor Classic. And this is our unfunded liability. So you can see it right now. We're showing the 238 down. In 24-25, the number they're projecting is down $556,000. We'll see if that happens once that holds true once they get their losses blended in there. So, but that is just a projection. My guess is that will not hold. So what we are projecting right now, we're showing a $163,000 deficit, which is at this stage of the game is pretty timid. It's a good number. There's a lot of assumptions in there, and we assume at this point pretty conservatively. So I'm not advocating any cuts in order to get to that to zero. We will have that to zero by the time we get to our budget workshop and to our obviously to our budget, our final budget adoption. So the base budget is, we've calculated this by updating all of our known changes, and we are pretty conservative on that. We don't have GSA cost allocation. IT, communications, and technology have not been updated as yet. I know our IT matrix will be going up. Our costs associated with simply Google and our email program is going up significantly. So those are all things that will drive that deficit up. And all wage increases that have been negotiated are included in there. So other potential issues, this is what I threw in, the slide I threw in after I submitted it for the agenda. The bid price for the jail expansion project is still unknown. We believe we have enough set aside to cover where we believe that the bid is going to come in and a little bit more. but that is not guaranteed. And the longer the state makes us wait, and they continue to wait, the longer we wait, the higher that price goes. Inflation is still high, and many contracts across the county are seeing increases year over year. That Google contract I just referenced, a lot of other consultants are asking to increase their rates. Everything's going up. Property values will likely stall, if not begin to decline because of high interest rates. Now, as Supervisor Axe pointed out, it's going to freeze the transactions. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to decrease. I think that's what you're asking me those questions to point out. But if people have to start cutting rates or cutting prices to get their houses sold, then that will be reflected in the property values.
Some of them are coming down.
Yeah.
Or they're claiming that they've slashed their prices.
Right. So,
reduced them, I'm sorry.
yes. The landfill project is still out there. We have the two projects to repair the cap and to expand the pond. Both of those at the behest of the Regional Water Board, which we are more than happy to complete. We worked out a sale or a loan agreement with the state revolving fund, but we've been unable to get the state to give us the documentation to secure that loan. It just seems, and the longer they wait, it's all completely in their court. As soon as we get it, we will sign it, approve it, and we will draw that loan. But as interest rates keep going up, the interest rates keep going up on that loan as well, costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars. The Regional Water Board doesn't seem to care about the fact that a different branch of the state is holding us up. So I don't know. We'll see how that shakes out, but that is a big cloud on the horizon. And as I mentioned earlier, CalPERS has not maintained their rate of return, so another increase will likely be coming in future years to make up for those losses.
Hey, Chuck, before you go on to the next slide, maybe you can back up one. You mentioned forward one. You mentioned the Regional Water Board incompetency, but that's pervasive in the state. The jail project, you kind of glossed over that, but Department of Finance, the state general services, it's just pervasive in the state with these departments not able to get just basic project approvals done on a timely basis, costing counties and cities millions of dollars.
That is, yes, and I hesitate to use terms like administrative incompetency, but I cannot say anything less than that relative to what we're seeing from the state right now. Nobody, it's not just this one department, whether it's this department or departments that are overseeing the jail project or folks that over at HHS are having to deal with the state, top to bottom, is non-responsive. It's just outright non-responsive. They are not getting any.
People probably don't realize how much time we spend lobbying to try and correct those incompetencies, but fortunately I was muted, so you didn't hear the words I was using.
So our next steps, our budgets are going out to department heads this week with instructions for a status quo submittal, which means if you ask for more, you need to cut somewhere else. Don't ask for more without coming prepared to make a reduction somewhere. We are covering the costs associated with the with pay increases and step increases, the A87 increases. We're covering all those administratively when they go to the board, or go to the department heads, so the department heads don't have to cut for those. They just need to keep, if they ask for something more, they need to cut somewhere else. So it's a pretty simple instruction. And given the clouds that are on the horizon economically, I would say I'm going to be very, very cautious towards any requested increases. and I would come to you with the same position. Salary increases have been, incorporated in there, that's what I just said. The general reserve is still at $7.7 million. Payroll reserve is at $3 million, and the jail reserve is at $2 million. We've identified other funding at $3.41 for the jail project as well. So that's what we've got set aside in anticipation of, covering the additional jail costs. So, as always, this will be continued to, be refined, and, the budget workshop in May will have a better outlook on things. This is our proposed budget calendar, March 15th. Budgets go to departments tomorrow. The budgets are due back on April 7th. April 17th to 21st, Kim and I will meet with the department heads to make sure we understand their budget. So May 2nd, and we need everybody to check their calendars on that. We've got our proposed budget workshop, which is the first Tuesday in May. It's an all-day thing. Everybody good? Supervisor Cruz is good. Supervisor Forster, are you good for that day?
Mine does not look good.
What if,
I'm good for it, but only if everybody else is.
anything we can change? I guess
Wide open, but,
Supervisor Oneto, anything, what's better for you? A better day? Thursday?
I'm gone pretty much almost that whole week,
Oh,
except
about
Friday.
May 8th, I'm wide open that day.
which one?
May 8th, be the next Monday.
The next Monday. How's everybody else working?
I can do the 5th or the 8th.
Yeah, I can do the 5th, even though it's Cinco de Mayo.
Omar,
Can we have Coronas?
There's okay with me also.
I can't do the 5th. I'll be at CSAC Finance Corp on the 3rd, 4th, 5th.
how about the 8th?
8th will work.
Just need to be out of here by 4 o'clock.
Okay, we will make that happen.
Okay, we'll change that to
So we will
the
move that to the
8th.
8th.
It is.
All right.
So the May 8th will be the budget workshop, and then that will still leave us enough time to get to the 13th for the, our adoption of the preliminary budget, which has to legally be adopted by the end of that month. So if something should go awry on the 13th, we still have the 27th. So, so that is all, that is where we are. So I guess my question to you is there anything that needs to change in our assumptions? Is there anything we need to include that's not been included? Any increases, decreases? We have taken the Chamber of Commerce back to the level they were at before, because it's my understanding that was a one-time increase. So
That's correct.
that, I don't know, anything else that you all might think of. We will go line by line at that budget workshop, so that will.
Now, the only thing I want to say is if we can find anything else for roads, as Bill talked about earlier, I would love to. I mean, I'm truly hoping with our new grant writer that she will be able to find something that will assist us.
Yeah.
So that's
That is a challenge.
it is.
Yeah.
No, roads is a biggie, and I think this winter storm, there was some collateral damage, plus it kind of showed that some of our, snow removal equipment's a little bit older. Had a few issues. Some you'd have normally, and some was, I think some was, I guess say bad weather or accidents happen, but also I think a little bit was maybe a little bit showing a little bit of age. So it's.
Well, I think you need a half-cent, self-help tax, so.
Well, I don't disagree.
Supervisor Forster, go ahead.
On the, Mr. Riley, on the carryover, historically, we've always been up around 7 million. So are you concerned, or do you see us building that carryover up in the ultimate budget?
No, our carryover shouldn't be $7 million. We should be around the $1 to $2 million range is where we should be.
What's the percentage? What's the 2.28, what percentage is the budget of that?
That is,
About 3%?
it's probably about 4 or 5%. Because the total budget is roughly 50, so,
General fund, yeah.
general fund budget is about 50, so, yeah, that's about 4%.
So you think that's sufficient?
I think that's, yeah, the carryover, that's where it should be.
No, our reserve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the reserve is at 7.7, and that's still where it's always been. So that's unchanged.
Okay, thank you.
But there were years, we shouldn't be budgeting $7-8 million, extra. That's over budgeting. And, you know, I know that there are department heads that well, it's what I stress to the department heads is that I want you to budget for what you think you're going to actually spend. Don't budget for contingencies. We will address the contingencies. If your computer dies, gets struck by lightning, we will address that. I don't want everybody budgeting for extra. And when they all budget for extra, then you end up with that $7-8 million carryover. And that's not where we want to be.
No,
We haven't been. The department heads are good at that.
the loan in this building is gone, what, 2026, is it?
I believe, yeah, I think it's actually 25. I will double check. Yeah,
But if
that's
the-
about 700,000 a year.
On the other hand, if the property taxes do take a big hit, we need that carryover.
Okay, anybody from the public comment? Yes.
Good morning.
Right.
Virginia Manor, District 3, and District 1. I wanted to make a couple comments, please. First of all, as far as the property taxes and real estate sales and all of that, I know at Jackson Creek increased 50% for our insurance because the state last year, in all their wisdom, came all the way down through Jackson and down into Ione, that sphere. And so getting insurance was almost impossible, doubled it to our homeowners too. We were 2 days after the flood, our insurance company canceled us, pulling out of California. That's a big company, Nationwide Allied. And it's getting increasingly hard for people to not only stay here, but also to buy here and then try and find insurance. And I was talking to a real estate person that was saying that just getting the insurance, especially in the upcountry district area, is very, very hard. So I think we really need to take a look at that hit in all phases, not just in the boom we once enjoyed, but now what is the reality? And I'm sure the recent floods, snow impacts and all of that, for anybody that wanted to buy a vacation home, is going to double think that particular item. The other thing that I was a little concerned about in the budget was that I know that there were agencies that came before you and asked for increases, salary increases. And I'm wondering if some of that could be deferred increases till after you have this budget, mid-year budget figured out, because then you know where your shortfalls are going to be, and you might have to make those adjustments. That, to me, was, in particular the sheriff's department, that was going to affect significantly.
I think we're at a point where, we don't need to ask for those concessions right now. The $150,000 deficit is manageable.
Right now, but as Supervisor Forrester suggested, we may be seeing quite a dip in a lot of areas. And so I'm just suggesting that perhaps there's a hold until you have this kind of information to evaluate the full picture and what you're looking going forward, and then, you know, make it more minimal or do whatever adjustment needs to be made. That's just a suggestion, just like a family budget. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody on Zoom?
Not at this time.
Okay. Bring it back to the board. Any other?
Information only.
Yeah, it was informational, I'm sorry.
Well, it was for any direction, that anything I need to
I think we're good.
do differently, but yeah, we'll go, line by line and, in May 8th now.
I guess, do you have enough money in there for down to landfill? Because if it keeps raining, we'd be probably trucking a lot of water.
Oh, we're already trucking.
Oh, I know, but I mean, a lot of water.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah.
Okay.
That fund is separate though. That is, a separate, enterprise fund. Not an enterprise fund, but it is, separate.
Okay.
Okay, on to 6D, Administrative Agency, discussion and possible action relative to amending sections 2.68.2020 and 2.68.025 of Chapter 2.68 as relative to salaries of elected officials. Suggested action is waiving the reading and scheduled for adoption on May 28th, consent agenda.
Supervisors, this is the ordinance that was, it has to be brought back to you for, approval. It will come back again in 2 weeks, on consent typically, unless you want to put it on regular. This is the direction that, the board gave staff, when we discussed it previously.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I have just a little bit. I'm gonna vote no on this. It's not so much on the COLAs for all the elected officials, but I think in here, probably gonna also have that, an additional, besides the COLAs, there's gonna be an additional 7% increase for the sheriff. And, I think right now, total cost to county for sheriff is like $333,905. And curious question, Mr. Eiley, does that also include, which I know he needs it for his job, but I think it's also used probably as whenever he goes wherever, does that include the cost for, sheriff's vehicle for Sheriff Redmond?
No, it does not.
So roughly, what benefit would that be? I mean, you're probably talking another roughly, what, $10,000 a year, I'd think, with the price of gas.
What it would take to drive to and from one's home.
I think that's just, he only goes to and from his home. I don't think that's the case, because I see a lot of government vehicles and I see them going all over the place, whether it's CAL FIRE or whether it's county sheriff or whatever. So that's my complaint, and it's so, do we have a total number what it's gonna be if you add the 11% additional for, the 1 year plus an additional 4? I've got some numbers, but they don't seem quite right to me. It looks like fiscal year 2022, 2023, there's a 4% increase, but then it has like 7% plus 4%, which I would think,
yeah, I think we need to revisit that number.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't see, I haven't seen a number what that total cost would be looking down the road. But anyway, leaving that all aside, you're looking at $333,905, and I understand that you wouldn't be increasing health costs and certain costs are set. But if I had to guess, I'd say when you start adding that up, you're gonna be getting up in the $360,000 range. And I look at, I don't begrudge a fair salary for an elected official or an employee. I think it's too much, and that's why I'm voting no. I'll just make it short.
Anybody else? Supervisor Axe? Supervisor Crew?
No.
Supervisor Forrester?
No, I think I've said my,
Okay.
Well, I got one more thing to say too. It was brought up about how much more Calaveras pays in Amador. Not to be denigrating Calaveras too much, but in the past, some board members and I have said, sometimes what Calaveras does, we do the opposite, and it seems like it served us very well a number of times. Perfect example is our building official. He's done us a very good job, and I think Calaveras, he had issues in Calaveras, but he's been wonderful here. So I think Calaveras, you've got one town. So the sheriff's office in Calaveras does almost the whole county, except for the one town, Angels Camp. Whereas in Amador, we've got 5 towns. A couple of those are covered by sheriffs, but that's under private contract. So food for thought. That's all I have to say.
Okay, call for the motion. Oh, excuse me, public comment. Anybody on Zoom?
Not at this time.
Okay. Now call for the motion.
All right, I'll move to approve the, amending sections, 2.68.020 and 2.68.025 of chapter 2.68 as it relates to salaries of elected officials, with the exception of supervisors. And waive the reading. Waiving the reading and scheduling for adoption on March 28th.
second,
Consent.
Okay. First by Supervisor Axe, second by Supervisor Forrester. Call for the vote.
Thank you, Chairman Brown.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Onetto.
Hey,
Supervisor Crew.
Aye.
Supervisor Axe.
Aye.
Supervisor Forster.
aye.
Okay. 4-1.
just for the record, I'm not opposed to COLAs for all elected officials. I just have a problem with that and additionally increase the sheriff. So I think the elected official has done a very good job, and I thank them for the work they do.
Okay, we'll move on to 6E, review and possible approval of the February 28th Board of Supervisor meeting minutes and the March 3rd Board of Supervisor special meeting minutes. Any changes?
I submitted my one tiny change, and for the the February 28th meeting.
Okay.
And, I didn't see anything on the March 3rd, so that's.
Anybody else?
Yeah, similar here. March 3rd was fine, but that one had a small one.
Okay. Supervisor Forrester?
No, I didn't go through it with a fine tooth comb, but I appreciate Supervisor Axe's clarity.
Okay, back to the board. Call for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
to approve. Well,
Second.
minor changes.
Yep.
Motion by Supervisor Neto, second by Supervisor Axe. Call for the vote.
Thank you, Chairman Brown.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Onetto.
Aye.
Supervisor Axe.
Aye.
Supervisor Crew.
Aye.
Supervisor Forster.
Aye.
Okay, that's 5-0. We will go into recess till 10:30 to start the public hearing. Okay, we're gonna bring this meeting back to order. We are in the public hearings. 7A, Planning Department, consideration of Planning Commission's recommendation to approve the general plan amendment, GPA 4-22-12-1, proposed amendments to the Kirkwood specific tree ordinance to clarify that hazardous tree removal or vegetation removal required for defensible space clearing per Public Resource Code 420-4291 is not subject to review by the Tri-County Technical Advisory Committee, provided that the tree vegetation removal is certified by a qualified forest professional.
Morning, Chuck Beatty with the Planning Department.
Morning, kind sir.
I could bore you with the staff report, but what really happened was in late 2019, CAL FIRE started issuing defensible space notices in Kirkwood. I think that was the first time they had done that. And Kirkwood has, since 2003, had a tree ordinance that said you needed approval from the Tri-County Technical Advisory Committee to do any kind of major tree removal, even for dead, dying, and diseased trees, or even hazardous trees after the fact. So there was this conflict between the local ordinance and the state law, and we met with CAL FIRE and U.S. Forest Service, and we all were in agreement that the state law overrode the local tree ordinance, so we wouldn't be trying to enforce the tree ordinance when it came to defensible space removal notices from CAL FIRE. Fast forward a few years, and Kirkwood the community decided to become a Firewise community, and one of the obstacles was this issue with the conflict between the local ordinance and state law. So at the same time, county staff was getting inundated with, or the Tri-County Committee was getting inundated with tree removal requests for dead, dying, and diseased trees and hazard trees to get permits for their removal, and you've got a shorter removal season up there. That committee only meets once a month at best, and it became an administrative burden for people to actually take down trees that were going to have to be cut down anyway. So in the overall revisions, we added clarifying language that if someone receives a notice or is required to do defensible space clearing, that is exempt from the permit requirements. And if a qualified forest professional says the tree is dead, dying, diseased, or is hazardous, the property owner can just take care of business, take the tree down, and you do not have to get a permit to do that.
Okay, well, we're gonna be opening public comment.
What is,
Go ahead.
what does, like El Dorado County do? I mean, they have a lot of trees up there by Tahoe. I mean,
Well, there's a small portion of El Dorado County that's subject to the Tri-County Joint Powers Agreement for Kirkwood. Interestingly enough, El Dorado County never adopted the Kirkwood specific plan, because at the time that was going through the process in the early 2000s, they were doing some litigation.
but with respect to removal of trees, I don't think they have a lot of restrictions, you know?
They do now, but I think they've realized that there's some issues with getting in the way of defensible space requirements and dead, dying, diseased trees, particularly with Caldor fire, that they're going to have to make some exceptions or exemptions to their current ordinance.
Yeah, I would say pretty much people love their trees. But what else happened? I mean, I guess our drought's somewhat over now, it seems like, but we've had the drought, and if you go up in Silver Lake, Kirkwood, there's just dead trees everywhere. There's a lot more trees that are probably fatally hurt. So yeah, I think it's taken up a whole lot of time, and I don't think it's really accomplishing much what we're doing right now as far as having the TriTac and the committee and all that. I understand the intent, they want to keep trees, but I think it was bad before the Caldor fire. I think the Caldor fire sent a lot of heat up into Silver Lake and Kirkwood, and a lot of those trees were kind of, even though they're green, they're probably baked a little bit, maybe, I wonder. So there's a lot of trees dying there, and with defensible space requirements, that needs to be done. So yeah, I think probably the changes to the ordinance are probably a necessary step to take.
It's a different philosophy than there was 20 years ago when the specific plan was adopted, and that was maintain all the trees at virtually any cost and with 2 close calls with Cowler Fire and McKinley Fire, there's them becoming a fire-wise community. There's obviously a different mentality than there was 20 years ago.
Yeah, reality, raised up its finger and says, hey, I'm here.
Okay, anybody on Zoom?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Forster would like to make a comment.
Go ahead, Supervisor Forster.
Just one small comment. This is more ministerial, the whole changes that are being requested, but under page 63 of the draft revisions, under number 8, up on top, as long as they're going to strike out TC and TAC, we probably should strike out proving body, probably should strike out IN to make it make sense. So it would say approving body on whether or not to require a bond. That makes sense, Chuck?
It does, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, again, is there anybody else on Zoom?
Not at this time.
Okay. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote?
Thank you, Chairman Brown,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Oneto,
Aye.
Supervisor Axe,
Aye.
Supervisor Crew,
Aye.
Supervisor Forster.
Aye.
Okay. Again, bring it back to the board.
I move to approve the recommendations to modify the proposed general plan amendment with the findings.
Second.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Forster, second by Supervisor Crew. Roll call vote?
Thank you, Chairman Brown,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Oneto,
Aye.
Supervisor Axe,
Aye.
Supervisor Crew,
Aye.
Supervisor Forster.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I guess we're on to 7B. Planning Department consideration of Land Use Committee's recommendation to amend County Code Chapter 7.36, Surface Mining and Reclamation, Section 7.36.185, Interim Management Plans by increasing the number of successful 5-year renewal terms for interim management plans from 2 to 3, consistent with the California Surface Mining and Reclamation Act.
So SMAR, the Surface Mining and Reclamation Act, allows for mines to enter what's considered an idle status if they file an interim management plan. They don't have to be completely idle, but they're allowed to operate with up to 10% of whatever their average growth has been in prior years. But they can maintain that status without being declared abandoned or without having to go and reclaim areas that are potentially going to be disturbed again in the foreseeable future. The state law allows for an initial interim management plan of 5 years, and it can be renewed twice, so for a total of 15 years. The county code allows for that initial IMP for 5 years with 1 renewal, but that rule, the county code was adopted in 1996, and there have been subsequent changes to the state law to allow that second renewal. And so our proposal is just to be consistent with state law to allow an initial IMP and 2 renewals for a total of 15 years.
Okay.
So,
Questions from the board?
yeah, I guess it's been a while since this was at the Land Use Committee.
A couple of years.
Okay, so that, it's really the 15-year change, you know, the extra renewal that is the major difference.
Right, from 10 to 15 total.
And then, if a mine is idle for that time, is it ever possible that there are any, you know, environmental concerns that should be taken into account?
So the IMP is designed to address that, but those mines are still inspected annually by the county so that we can, you know, keep an eye on that. And those inspections are designed to make sure, one, they have adequate financial assurance on file with the county and the state to take care of the reclamation in the event the operator doesn't do that, and to see what the level of reclamation is needed so that bond or letter of credit is
Is there ever like a mine scenario that a mine is idle and but it's open, the ground is open, that it's causing problems somewhere, or? I can't think of anything.
In most of the ones in Amador County, generally it's a surface mine as a pit, so everything runs to the middle, without having, surface water, going off site. I can't recall any, complaints or violations that have been issued for, surface runoff, leaving a mine onto adjacent property.
But if there was a problem, yearly inspection would bring that to the attention?
Yes.
And raise it to a level to be addressed?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the purpose of the annual inspection.
Supervisor Forrester.
Thank you. Chuck, under the county code 7.36, that one paper you have inserted, interim management plans, you added section E. It's page 71. And that section E doesn't seem consistent with what we're doing. It addresses the first 5-year renewal, but not the second.
So that's the original, that's the code as it's currently written.
Okay, you just highlighted it, the original.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, open up public comment. Anybody on Zoom?
Not at this time.
Move to close public hearing.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion by Supervisor Axe, second by Supervisor Neto. Roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chairman Brown,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Oneto,
Aye.
Supervisor Axe,
Aye.
Supervisor Crew,
Aye.
Supervisor Forster.
Aye.
Okay. Again, back to the board again. Any discussion?
I think it makes sense and plus aligns with the state, SMARA, Surface Mine Reclamation Act. So I make a motion to approve the recommended modifications.
Okay. Second. Motion by Supervisor Axe, second by Supervisor Crew. Roll call vote.
Thank you, Chairman Brown,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Oneto,
Aye.
Supervisor Axe,
Aye.
Supervisor Crew,
Aye.
Supervisor Forster.
Aye.
Motion by, Brian.
Did I have that backwards?
Yeah.
All right.
That motion did include with the findings, right, Supervisor Oneto?
Yes, it should. So I'll make that part of my motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor, Mr. Beatty, this is Greg Gillott. I just have a question. Did this go to the planning commission?
It's not part of the
Yeah.
the county code that's subject to the commission or the planning commission's, review, so no, it did not.
So I don't believe this is something the board can adopt today. This is a more typical ordinance amendment, so we'll have to do it like our normal ordinances, which is waive the reading and put it over for adoption at the subsequent meeting.
New motion.
We need to modify the motion.
Okay, well, I'd make a motion that, we approve in concept, amending, County Code Chapter 7.36, Surface Mine Reclamation, Section 7.36.185, our intent to amend it and put it on for, waive the reading and put on for future meeting.
Second.
Okay.
So in it, essentially, Greg, we're waiving the reading today, correct?
Yes, you're waiving the reading and it'll be on the consent agenda for adoption at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. And now we're on to addendum 1A, which is now 7C.
I think we have to vote on that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have to vote again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman Brown,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Oneto,
Aye.
Supervisor Axe,
Aye.
Supervisor Crew,
Aye.
Supervisor Forster.
Aye.
Okay. Unanimous vote. Now we're on to 7C. Planning Department discussion and possible action relative to public hearings to consider the Planning Commission's recommendation to deny zoning ordinance amendment ZOA 2212-2 regarding a proposal amendment to the County Code Chapter of 19.72.050B accessory dwelling unit to establish that rental terms for accessory dwelling units be longer than 30 days.
So when the board made the change to the minimum square footage for new single-family dwellings from 800 square feet down to 360 square feet, you had concerns that there would be potentially an increase in those smaller units to be used just as short-term rentals rather than permanent housing. And you adopted a resolution of intent that asked the Planning Commission and staff to move forward with an ordinance that would change to amend the code so that all accessory dwelling units that were constructed would have to be used as long-term rentals or no rental rather than short-term rentals. There are two categories of detached accessory dwelling units in the county. One are allowed to be as large as the primary house. There's no restriction on whether or not it can be a short-term rental, and they have to meet the local parking requirements. The Category 2 units have to be under 800 square feet. There's no parking requirements, but state law and county code requires that they be rented for terms longer than 30 days. So one of the Category 1s are up for discussion because the state law doesn't allow doesn't allow permanent or short-term rentals of the Category 2 homes. The Planning Commission reviewed this at their, I believe, December and January meetings. Ultimately, they decided to recommend that we deny the proposed amendment. I think their primary concern was it reduced the flexibility for property owners that have accessory dwelling units that are the Category 1 type to use them for short-term rentals. There have been 15 accessory dwelling units applied for since the statutory language changed on January 1st of 2020. All of those have been Category 1 homes. There haven't been any that have been the Category 2 homes. But we don't know whether or not they've been short-term rentals because we don't regulate them.
But the ordinance only applies to Category 2, correct?
Category 1.
Category 1. Units must be as large as primary house. Well, Category 1 has no limit on rental duration.
Correct, no limit. There's no regulation on it at all.
Okay, but Category 2 can't be an Airbnb, correct?
Category 1 can be an Airbnb. Category 2 is required by state law to be rented longer than 30 days.
Okay, and our ordinance is consistent with both of those?
It is. I mean,
okay.
The state law, that legislation was intended to create more affordable housing.
Yes.
And it'd be long-term rental, but they had this carve-out for units that could be larger and used as short-term rentals.
Okay, but we're not restricting what the state is already mandated, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The state law allows you
to
you to regulate the Category 1s so that they have rental terms longer than 30 days.
But we're not doing that in this.
We were looking to.
That was the intent, yes.
Okay.
Which I'm not, that doesn't mean I'm in favor of it, but that's what we're, I guess, exploring.
Okay, so that's what came out of Land Use Committee?
Yes.
Remember that part? I know
No,
that
this came from the board, didn't it?
accessory dwelling units.
It came from the board, then to Land Use, then to the Planning Commission, and now we're back.
Yeah, originally the board got it in motion. I mean, I understand the intent, trying to get more rentals available for people, but one thing I've seen is a lot of times people won't rent their properties, make a longer term, because you get a tenant in there, the tenant tears up the property, and then you're spending more than you made on it. And I think also what happened too, is you had the whole deal with the COVID deal where people didn't have to pay rent for how long. So I think the landlord said, hey, I don't want to be renting, having someone in there, not collecting rent, and having the exposure, just liability of damage to your property. With that said, and also too, a number of people supplement their income by renting out, like your Category 1, accessory dwelling units. I mean, a lot of people I know do that, and that's how they bring some extra money in, is by renting out like a little small house they have on their property.
How would this ordinance affect people that are already doing that in category one?
It would require those category ones to be, if they're rented, to be rented for longer than 30 days. They couldn't be.
So they can't be grandfathered?
I don't think that, no.
Okay.
Well, let's, open up for, public comment. Oh, wait.
Mr. Chair, can I put a couple of
Yes.
comments in? I don't see anything that changes my opinion of what the recommendation was and the board sent forward to be adopted. One, these accessory dwelling units, to me, are not vacation rentals. They give an opportunity for someone to make an extra income by renting out, and the argument was brought up that about basically evictions, that it will just cost money. It'll be a lengthy process if they have to evict. Well, if they're in there for 30 days plus anyway, they're long-term renters. So just like anybody else, they have to deal with that issue. But as far as the property rights issue, you know, this came up originally in our discussions that we're protecting the property rights of the adjacent property owners too. So you don't have that case where someone on the adjacent property is shooting or playing super loud music. Yes, you can deal with that with the noise ordinance, but we're kind of preempting that by adopting this measure today. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, but one thing I will say is just calling it what it is. You can have an idiot, whether it's a short-term rental, long-term rental, or somebody that's lived in the county, you know, 100 years. So, and sometimes, so there is that too. I mean,
Well,
I would agree. I would agree with that, Supervisor Neto, but those people coming in for a weekend are there to have a good time, and sometimes they have too much of a good time.
all times probably true.
I do know I've had 3 incidences up in the upcountry where people have done a short-term rental while we've had these last storms because they couldn't go up to Kirkwood, so they rented something there. They get their cars stuck in the middle of the private roads and just left them there and abandoned the cars, and the people living around them couldn't get out of their own places. So it's been a interesting couple weeks for short-term rentals. So now we need to open up public comment. Anybody on Zoom?
Not at this time.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Public hearing?
Okay.
Second.
Call for a vote.
Thank you, Chairman Brown,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Oneto,
Aye.
Supervisor Axe,
Aye.
Supervisor Crew,
Aye.
Supervisor Forster.
Aye.
Okay. Is now back to the board.
I would move that we approve the recommendation to modify the proposed ordinance amendment with the findings.
I'll second.
Question on that. I thought they did not recommend approval of the ordinance. Modification.
Recommendation was to deny it, correct?
Yes. Is that, okay, so we're denying going forward with the modification? Is that your motion?
Well, the intent is to override the planning commission and approve the proposed ordinance amendments.
Okay, then you're not taking the planning commission's recommendations in?
I'm not taking the planning commission's recommendation.
Okay.
Correct, yes.
Taking the land use committee's recommendation.
But it's
Well, and-
because they're
So that was basically, by doing that, short-term VRBOs would go away in the county then, on accessory dwelling units? That's correct then, Chuck?
all ADUs would be longer than 30 days.
If rented, yes.
Yeah.
Some people use them family and friends only, they're not rented, so that doesn't apply to them. Just if it's rented, then the term has to be 30 days or longer.
Okay. Call for a vote?
Thank you. Chairman Brown?
No.
Vice Chairman Oneto?
No.
Supervisor Axe?
Aye.
Supervisor Crew?
Aye.
Supervisor Forster?
Aye.
Okay, it'd be a 3-2 vote. And so now, we are done with the regular meeting, and we'll go back to closed session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.